The words hit me like a physical blow, and I felt my hand freeze mid-air, the champagne glass trembling between my fingers. "What did you just say?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the soft jazz playing in the background of the upscale restaurant where we'd agreed to meet. The dim lighting, which moments ago had felt romantic and celebratory, now seemed to close in around me like a suffocating embrace. My daughter Maya sat across from me, her dark eyes avoiding mine, fingers nervously twisting the simple gold band on her left hand. A ring I was seeing for the first time. The late September evening in downtown Chicago painted the windows with amber light, the city's heartbeat pulsing outside, while my own heart felt like it was shattering into 1,000 pieces. "Mom, please." Maya's voice cracked, and I could see tears beginning to form in her eyes. She looked so much like I did at 28. The same high cheekbones, the same determined jawline, the same expression of defiance mixed with fear that I'd worn so many times in my youth. But I never hid something like this from my mother. "Please what, Maya?" I set the champagne glass down carefully, my hands shaking so badly I was afraid I'd drop it. "Please understand that my only daughter got married without telling me. Please be okay with the fact that I wasn't there to see you walk down the aisle. Please accept that you cut me out of one of the most important moments of your life." The waiter approached our table, sensed the tension, and quickly retreated. Around us, other diners continued their conversations, oblivious to the earthquake happening at table 17. Maya finally looked up at me, and the pain in her eyes almost made me regret my harsh words. Almost. "It wasn't like that," she said quietly. "It wasn't about cutting you out. It was about doing something that was ours, just ours. Marcus and I, we didn't want the pressure, the expectations, the family?" I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. "Is that what you were going to say? You didn't want your family there?" "That's not fair, Mom." "Fair?" I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not now. You want to talk about fair? I raised you by myself after your father left. I worked 2 jobs to put you through Northwestern. I was there for every dance recital, every graduation, every heartbreak, and you couldn't even pick up the phone to tell me you were getting married." Maya's face crumpled, and a tear rolled down her cheek, leaving a glistening trail in the candlelight. "We eloped to the courthouse. It was just us and 2 witnesses we found outside. It wasn't some big ceremony we planned and excluded you from." Somehow, that made it worse. I'd spent 28 years imagining my daughter's wedding day. I'd pictured myself helping her choose a dress, probably crying in every bridal shop in Chicago. I'd imagined walking her down the aisle, taking on both parental roles like I'd done for everything else in her life. I dreamed of giving a mother-of-the-bride speech, of dancing with her, of welcoming a son-in-law into our small but fierce family. Instead, I got this. A casual dinner invitation that I thought was about wedding planning, turning into the revelation that there was no wedding to plan. It had already happened. Without me. "Why?" The word came out as barely more than a breath. "Just tell me why, Maya. What did I do that was so terrible that you couldn't include me?" Maya wiped her eyes with her napkin, leaving a smudge of mascara on the white linen. Outside, the Chicago wind picked up, rattling the restaurant windows, matching the storm brewing inside me. "It wasn't about you, Mom," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It was about us not wanting the fuss. Marcus and I, we're private people. We didn't want a big wedding with hundreds of people we barely know, with months of planning and stress, and I'm not hundreds of people, Maya. I'm your mother." The silence that followed was deafening. Jazz music played on, the saxophone's mournful notes seeming to underscore the gulf that had suddenly opened between us. I thought about all the little moments over the past few months that suddenly made sense. Maya's vague answers when I asked about wedding plans. the way she changed the subject whenever I brought up venues or dates, the uncomfortable laugh when I mentioned going dress shopping together. I'd attributed it to stress, to the busy life of a young professional working at a demanding law firm. I'd told myself she'd come around, that she just needed time. I never imagined this. "When?" I asked, my voice hollow. "When did it happen?" "August 15th, Maya said quietly. "It was a Tuesday afternoon. We took the day off work, went to the courthouse, and then had dinner at that little Italian place Marcus loves. August 15th. I tried to remember what I'd been doing that day. Probably working at the university, grading papers, or meeting with students, living my normal life while my daughter was making one of the most significant decisions of her existence. "Does Marcus's family know?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Maya's hesitation told me everything. His parents found out last week. They didn't take it well either. At least I wasn't alone in my exclusion, though that thought brought no comfort. I looked at my daughter, this woman who'd grown from the tiny baby I'd held in my arms at Cook County Hospital 28 years ago, who'd said her first words in our cramped apartment in Hyde Park, who'd cried in my lap after her first breakup, who'd called me in excitement when she got into law school. How had we arrived at this moment, sitting across from each other like strangers? "I need some air," I said, standing abruptly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor, drawing glances from nearby tables. "Mom, please don't leave. Let's talk about this." But I was already grabbing my purse, my coat, moving toward the door. The autumn air hit me as I stepped outside, cool and sharp, carrying the scent of roasting chestnuts from a nearby vendor and the ever-present Chicago smell of the lake. I walked without direction, my heels clicking against the concrete, tears finally streaming down my face. The city lights blurred into watercolor streaks. Somewhere behind me, I heard Maya calling my name, but I kept walking, needing space, needing air, needing to process the fact that my daughter had gotten married without me. My phone buzzed in my purse. Probably Maya. I ignored it. As I turned the corner onto Michigan Avenue, the magnificent buildings rising above me like steel sentinels, I realized that this wasn't just about a wedding. This was about all the small distances that had grown between us over the years. All the conversations we'd avoided, all the expectations I'd placed on her without realizing it. This was about the fact that somewhere along the way, I'd lost my daughter, and I had no idea how to get her back. 3 days had passed since that disastrous dinner, and I hadn't answered any of Maya's calls. I sat in my home office on Saturday morning, the October sun streaming through the bay windows of my Lincoln Park brownstone, illuminating the framed photographs that lined the walls. A visual timeline of Maya's life that now felt like evidence of my failure as a mother. There she was, at 6, missing her front teeth, grinning at the camera on her first day of school. At 13, awkward and beautiful in her middle school graduation gown. At 18, radiant in her prom dress, the lavender fabric shimmering under the flash of my camera. But there was no wedding photo. There would never be a wedding photo with me in it. My phone buzzed for the 17th time that morning. Maya again. I watched it vibrate across my mahogany desk, the screen displaying a picture of the two of us from her law school graduation, both of us laughing, arms around each other, seemingly inseparable. That was only 3 years ago. How had everything changed so quickly? I let the call go to voicemail, then immediately felt a pang of guilt so sharp it made my chest ache. This wasn't who I was. I didn't ignore my daughter. I didn't sulk or give silent treatment. But I also didn't know how to face her yet, how to have a conversation when I still felt so betrayed, so utterly heartbroken. My best friend, Denise, had been calling too, probably alerted by Maya that I was in avoidance mode. Denise had been my rock since we met in graduate school 30 years ago, the sister I'd never had. She'd understand, but she'd also tell me I was being stubborn, and she'd probably be right. I picked up my coffee mug, now cold, and walked to the kitchen. The brownstone felt too quiet, too empty. It had felt that way since Maya moved out 2 years ago, but now the silence seemed to echo with all the conversations we weren't having. As I poured a fresh cup of coffee, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked tired, older than my 56 years. The elegant woman who'd sat across from her daughter 3 days ago had been replaced by someone wearing an old Northwestern sweatshirt, her hair pulled back haphazardly, eyes ringed with dark circles from too many sleepless nights. The doorbell rang, and I considered not answering it. But then I heard Denise's voice through the door. "Claire, I know you're in there. Your car's in the driveway and Maya's worried sick. Open up." I sighed and walked to the door, unlocking it to find Denise standing there with a bag of bagels and a determined expression on her warm brown face. She brushed past me without waiting for an invitation, her silver braids swinging as she headed straight for my kitchen. "You look terrible," she said, setting the bagels on the counter and immediately starting to make herself at home, pulling out plates and cream cheese from my refrigerator like she'd done 1,000 times before. "Good morning to you too," I muttered, closing the door. "Don't good morning me. You've been ignoring your daughter for 3 days. You've been ignoring me, and from what Maya tells me, you walked out of that restaurant like you were in a drama series." "She called you?" I felt a fresh wave of hurt wash over me. Of course she did. Denise turned to face me, her expression softening. "She's worried about you, Claire, and she's hurting too." "She's hurting?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "She got married without telling me, Denise. She's been married for over a month and I didn't even know. How am I supposed to feel about that?" "Like a mother who's been hurt by her daughter," Denise said gently. "Which is exactly what you're feeling. But hiding in your house and refusing to talk to her isn't going to fix anything." I slumped into one of the kitchen chairs, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what to say to her. Every time I think about picking up the phone, I can't. The words won't come. Denise sat across from me, pushing a bagel in my direction, even though I'd lost my appetite days ago. "Then maybe you need to figure out why before you talk to her. This isn't just about the wedding, is it?" I looked at my oldest friend, this woman who knew me better than anyone, and felt tears threatening again. "I don't know. Maybe not. I keep thinking about all the times over the past few years when she pulled away a little more. The holidays she spent with Marcus's family instead of with me. The phone calls that got shorter and less frequent. The way she'd get defensive when I asked about her life." "You mean when you tried to give her advice?" Denise asked pointedly. "I'm her mother. That's what mothers do." "Claire." Denise reached across the table and took my hand. "Do you remember what you told me when Jessica went through her rebellious phase? You said I needed to let her make her own mistakes, that holding on too tight would only push her away. That was different. Was it? Or are you just on the other side of it now?" I pulled my hand away, standing up to pace. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too confining. I didn't push Maya away. I supported her in everything. I sacrificed everything for her after David left. I put my career on hold. I worked multiple jobs. "You were an amazing mother," Denise interrupted firmly. "You still are. But Maya's not a little girl anymore, Claire. She's a grown woman who made a choice. Maybe not the choice you wanted, but her choice nonetheless. So I'm just supposed to accept it. Pretend I'm not devastated that I missed my only daughter's wedding." "No. You're supposed to talk to her about it. Tell her how you feel. Listen to how she feels. Maybe try to understand why she felt she couldn't include you." The last part stung because it touched on the question that had been haunting me since that dinner. What had I done to make Maya feel like she couldn't share this with me? I sank back into the chair, my anger deflating into something heavier, more painful. What if she tells me something I don't want to hear? What if I've been a terrible mother and just didn't realize it? Then you deal with it, Denise said softly. You apologize. You grow. You rebuild. That's what love is, Claire. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. We sat in silence for a moment, the morning sun shifting across the kitchen table, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny aimless spirits. I had it all planned out, I finally whispered. The wedding. I was going to help her choose a dress. We'd go to all the shops, have champagne, cry together when she found the one. I'd walk her down the aisle because her father isn't here to do it. I'd give a speech about how proud I was, how beautiful she was, how lucky Marcus was. I had it all in my head, Denise. This perfect day that would be just ours. I know, honey, I know. And now that day will never happen. She took it from me, and I don't know how to forgive her for that. Denise stood and wrapped me in a hug, and I finally let myself cry. Really cry, for the first time since that night. I cried for the wedding that never was, for the distance between my daughter and me, for all the expectations I'd built up over the years that had crumbled in a single sentence. When my tears finally subsided, Denise pulled back and looked at me seriously. You know what you need to do, right? Call her. Not just call her, really talk to her, ask her why. Listen without judgment. Try to understand her perspective even if it hurts. What if I can't? You can, Denise said with confidence. You're one of the strongest women I know, Claire Thompson. You raised a daughter alone. You built a career at one of the best universities in the country. You survived a divorce that would have broken most people. You can have a difficult conversation with your daughter. I nodded, though I didn't feel as certain as Denise sounded. After she left, taking the mostly uneaten bagels with her, I stood in front of the photograph wall again. This time, I looked more carefully at the recent pictures. Maya at 25, her law firm headshot, professional, composed, but there was something guarded in her eyes. Maya at 26 at Christmas dinner, smiling but somehow distant. Maya at 27 at my birthday party, laughing at something Marcus had said but leaving early. Had she been pulling away all this time, and I'd just been too busy trying to hold on to notice? My phone rang again. Maya. This time I picked up. Mom? Her voice was thick with emotion, uncertain. Hi, baby, I said, my own voice cracking on the words. I'm so glad you answered. I've been so worried. I tried to come by yesterday, but you didn't answer the door, and I thought maybe you were at work, but then I called the university, and they said you'd canceled your office hours, and I just... Maya, breathe, I interrupted gently, recognizing the rambling pattern she'd had since childhood when she was anxious. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Not for getting married, I'm not sorry for that, but for how I told you, for not including you, for hurting you. I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall. I need to understand why, Maya. I need you to help me understand. Can we meet? Not at a restaurant this time. Maybe at home? Your home? Yes, I said. Come over tomorrow. We'll talk. Really talk. After we hung up, I felt something shift inside me. Not quite hope, but maybe the possibility of hope. The first tiny crack in the wall of hurt and anger I'd built up. I spent the rest of the day preparing for our conversation, trying to plan what I'd say. But every rehearsed speech felt wrong. Finally, I realized that maybe this wasn't something I could plan. Maybe this was something I just had to feel my way through. As evening fell and the Chicago skyline lit up outside my windows, I thought about what Denise had said about holding on too tight. Had I been so focused on being the perfect mother, on doing everything my own mother hadn't done, that I'd somehow pushed Maya away without realizing it? Tomorrow, I'd find out. Tomorrow, I'd listen, really listen, to what my daughter had to say. And maybe, just maybe, we'd start to find our way back to each other. Sunday afternoon arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of October day that Chicago rarely gifts its residents. Golden sunlight pouring through bare tree branches, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the last remnants of autumn flowers. I'd been awake since dawn, cleaning the house with nervous energy, changing my outfit 3 times, making and remaking tea that I never drank. By the time the doorbell rang at 2 o'clock, I'd nearly convinced myself to cancel, to push this conversation into some indefinite future where it might hurt less. But there she was when I opened the door, my daughter, looking as nervous as I felt. Maya wore jeans and an oversized cardigan, her natural hair pulled back in a low ponytail, no makeup except for a touch of lip gloss. She looked young, vulnerable, so much like the little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. "Hi, Mom," she said quietly. "Come in, sweetheart." We sat in the living room, the space that had witnessed so many moments of our shared history. Homework sessions at the coffee table, movie nights on the couch, countless conversations about life and love and everything in between. Now it felt like neutral territory, a demilitarized zone where we'd attempt to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. I'd made chamomile tea, Maya's favorite since childhood, and set out some cookies from the bakery she loved. Small gestures, but they were all I knew how to offer in this moment. "Thank you for seeing me," Maya began, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'll always see you, Maya. I just needed some time to process." She nodded, staring into her tea. The silence stretched between us, neither of us quite knowing how to begin. Finally, I decided to be direct. "Help me understand, baby. Just help me understand why you felt you couldn't tell me about the wedding. Why you chose to exclude me from something so important." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "It wasn't about excluding you, Mom. It was about not disappointing you." "Disappointing me?" I felt confusion wash over me. "How would including me in your wedding disappoint me? Because nothing I do is ever enough." The words burst out of her raw and painful. "Because no matter what I achieve or how hard I try, there's always this look in your eyes, like I'm not quite measuring up to whatever standard you've set for me." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Maya, that's not true. I'm so proud of you." "Are you?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "Or are you proud of the version of me you wanted me to be? The daughter who would have a big traditional wedding at the Drake Hotel with 300 guests and a designer dress? The daughter who would marry a doctor or a lawyer from the right family? The daughter who would do everything the way you would have done it if you'd had the chance? That's not fair." My voice shook. "I never said any of that." "You didn't have to say it, Mom." It was in every comment about Marcus's career. "Is he sure he wants to stay in social work? The pay isn't great, is it?" It was in every question about our plans. "Don't you think you're moving too fast? Maybe you should wait until he's more established." It was in the way you'd compare our relationship to your friends' children's relationships, always pointing out what they were doing differently. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died in my throat because, horrifyingly, I could remember saying some of those things. I thought I was being helpful, protective, looking out for her best interests. "I didn't mean it that way," I whispered. "I was just trying to help you avoid the mistakes I made." "I'm not you, Mom." Maya's voice cracked with emotion. "I'm not Dad either. I'm not going to abandon my family or fail at marriage just because you and Dad did." "But that's what you're always waiting for, isn't it? You're always waiting for me to fail, to prove that I need you to save me." That's not true. But even as I said it, I wondered if maybe it was. Had I been so shaped by my own failed marriage, by the fear of Maya experiencing the same pain I had, that I'd projected all my anxieties onto her? Maya set down her mug with shaking hands. "Do you know why Marcus and I got married at the courthouse? It wasn't just because we wanted something simple. It was because every time I tried to talk to you about wedding plans, you'd take over. You'd have opinions about the venue, the guest list, the flowers, the dress. You'd already picked out photographers and caterers. You had this entire wedding planned in your head, and it wasn't our wedding, Mom. It was yours. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and cutting. I wanted to deny them, but flashes of memory kept surfacing, showing Maya pictures of venues I liked, sending her links to dresses that I thought would be perfect, mentioning how disappointed my colleagues would be if they weren't invited. I thought I was helping, I said weakly. I thought I was being a supportive mother. You were being a controlling mother, Maya said, then immediately looked stricken. I'm sorry, that came out harsher than I meant. But Mom, you need to hear this. You need to understand that your way of showing love sometimes feels like suffocation. I stood up abruptly, walking to the window, unable to look at her. Outside, a couple walked by with their dog, laughing about something, their lives uncomplicated and easy. I envied them. After your father left, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. I promised myself that I would never let you feel abandoned, that I would be enough for you, mother and father both, that I would give you everything I never had, that I would protect you from every hurt, every disappointment. I know, Mom, and you did. You were amazing. You are amazing. Maya's voice was softer now, and I heard her move behind me. But I'm 28 years old. I don't need protection anymore. I need a mother who can let me make my own choices, even if they're not the choices she would make. I turned to face her, tears streaming down my face. I'm so scared of losing you. You're not going to lose me, Maya said, stepping closer. But you might push me away if you can't accept that my life is going to look different from what you imagined. Marcus isn't a doctor or a lawyer, but he's kind and brilliant, and he treats me like an equal partner. Our wedding wasn't at the Drake Hotel, but it was perfect for us, intimate and meaningful and ours. And yes, we're going to make mistakes, but they'll be our mistakes to make and learn from. I sank back into my chair, feeling the weight of everything she'd said pressing down on me. I've been a terrible mother. No, Maya said firmly, sitting beside me and taking my hand. You've been a mother who loves her daughter so much that sometimes you forget she's grown up. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a long moment, hands clasped, both of us crying quietly. Outside, the afternoon light began to shift toward evening, painting the room in shades of amber and gold. Tell me about your wedding day, I finally said. Please, I want to know everything. Maya's face brightened slightly, though tears still clung to her lashes. It was a Tuesday, like I said. We took the afternoon off work. Marcus wore this navy suit that he'd bought for his sister's wedding last year, and I wore a cream-colored dress I found at a vintage shop in Wicker Park. It had these delicate lace sleeves, and it made me feel beautiful without trying too hard. I listened, picturing it in my mind, so different from the grand affair I'd imagined, but I could hear the joy in Maya's voice as she described it. We went to the courthouse downtown, and there was this older couple there getting married too. They must have been in their 70s. The woman kept fussing over my dress, saying I looked like an angel. They agreed to be our witnesses, and we were theirs. There was something really special about that, you know? These strangers sharing this moment with us. What about the ceremony? I asked, genuinely wanting to know now. It was short, maybe 10 minutes. The judge was this kind African-American woman who gave us this little speech about marriage being about partnership and growth. Then we said our vows. We'd written our own private ones that we whispered to each other. And then it was done. We were married. And afterward, we walked through Millennium Park, just the two of us. It was a beautiful day, and we took pictures with Marcus's phone by the bean. Then we went to Piccolo Sogno, that Italian place in River West that Marcus loves. We had pasta and wine and cannoli, and we talked about our future, about the family we want to build, about growing old together. As she spoke, I realized that while it wasn't the wedding I dreamed of for her, it was authentically Maya. Intimate, meaningful, focused on what mattered to her and Marcus rather than on impressing others. "It sounds perfect," I said, and I meant it. "It sounds exactly right for you." Maya squeezed my hand. "I wish you could have been there, Mom. Not to plan it or control it, but just to be there, as my mother. That's my biggest regret, that we didn't include you in a way that would have worked for all of us." "I wish I'd been the kind of mother you could have included," I admitted. "I wish I'd listened more and directed less. I wish I'd seen that you were building a beautiful life, even if it looked different from what I'd imagined." "We can't change what happened," Maya said, "but we can change what happens next, if you're willing." "What do you mean?" Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a simple white envelope. "Marcus and I want to have a small celebration, just close friends and family. Nothing fancy, just dinner and cake and celebrating our marriage with the people we love. It's in 3 weeks, and Mom, I really, really want you to be there. Not to plan it or control it, but just to celebrate with us, to meet Marcus's parents properly, to be part of our new family." I took the envelope with trembling hands, pulling out the simple invitation inside. It was beautiful in its simplicity, cream cardstock with elegant script, inviting me to celebrate Maya and Marcus Thompson Williams. "You took his name?" I asked, noticing it for the first time. "We both did," Maya said with a smile. "Hyphenated. We're building something new together, something that's ours, Thompson Williams." It felt right. I looked at the invitation again, at my daughter's new name, at this symbol of her new life, a life she'd built without my input or approval, and yet a life that still wanted to include me. "I'll be there," I said, pulling her into a hug. "And I promise, I'll be there as your mother, not as a wedding planner or critic or anything else. Just as someone who loves you and wants to celebrate your happiness." We held each other for a long moment, and I felt something shift between us. Not a return to how things were, but maybe the beginning of something new. A relationship built on mutual respect rather than my need to control, on acceptance rather than expectations. "I love you, Mom," Maya whispered into my shoulder. "I love you too, baby. So, so much." As we pulled apart, wiping tears and laughing at how messy we both looked, I realized that this honest, painful, healing conversation was more valuable than any wedding I could have planned. Because this was about something deeper than one day. This was about learning to love my daughter, not as an extension of myself, but as the remarkable woman she'd become. And maybe, just maybe, learning to forgive myself for being imperfect along the way. The 3 weeks between that conversation and the celebration dinner passed in a blur of small, tentative steps toward healing. Maya and I started having coffee together every Saturday morning at a little cafe in Lakeview, neutral territory where we practiced this new dynamic, me listening more, her opening up more. We talked about her work at the law firm, about Marcus's latest project with at-risk youth, about the apartment they were renovating in Logan Square. And I practiced biting my tongue when my instinct was to offer unsolicited advice, learning instead to ask, "How do you feel about that?" and really listen to her answer. It wasn't always easy. Old habits fought hard to survive. But every time I caught myself starting to take over or impose my vision, I'd remember the pain in Maya's voice when she'd said, "I'm not you, Mom," and I'd pull back, take a breath, and try again. Denise was proud of me, even as she laughed at my struggles. "You're learning to let go," she'd said over lunch one afternoon. "It's like watching someone learn to swim, awkward and splashy, but you're staying afloat." Now, on the night of the celebration dinner, I stood in front of my closet, staring at my options with unusual uncertainty. The old Claire would have worn something commanding, A designer suit, statement jewelry, heels that added 3 inches to my height. But tonight wasn't about making a statement. It was about being present for my daughter in the way she needed me to be. I chose a simple burgundy dress, elegant but understated, paired with modest heels and the pearl earrings Maya had given me for my 50th birthday. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not the polished professor or the formidable single mother who'd conquered every challenge through sheer force of will, but simply a woman hoping to celebrate her daughter's happiness. The celebration was being held at a small private dining room at Girl and the Goat, one of Chicago's most beloved restaurants. As I arrived, the early November evening had turned crisp and the city lights reflected off the Chicago River, creating a magical shimmer that seemed to match the nervous excitement in my chest. Maya and Marcus were greeting guests at the entrance when I arrived. Marcus, I'd met him several times before, but I realized now that I'd never really seen him through unbiased eyes. He was tall and lean, with warm brown eyes and an easy smile, wearing a well-fitted charcoal suit that suggested quiet confidence rather than showiness. When he saw me, his smile was genuine, if a bit cautious. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you so much for coming." "Please call me Claire," I said, taking his hand. "And thank you for including me. I know I haven't made things easy." "You're Maya's mother," he replied simply. "That makes you family. We're glad you're here." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard, and I felt tears threatening. Maya stepped forward and wrapped me in a hug, and I held my daughter close, breathing in her familiar scent, the same jasmine perfume she'd worn since college. "You look beautiful, Mom," she whispered. "Thank you for being here." "I wouldn't miss this for anything," I whispered back. The dining room was intimate and warmly lit, decorated with simple fall arrangements of rust-colored mums and golden leaves. There were perhaps 30 people there, a far cry from the 300 I'd once imagined, but the room felt full of genuine warmth and love. I recognized some of Maya's law school friends, a few colleagues from her firm, and Marcus's siblings. And there, near the windows overlooking the river, was an older black couple who I immediately knew must be Marcus's parents. Marcus guided me over to them. "Mom, Dad, I'd like you to meet Claire Thompson, Maya's mother. Claire, these are my parents, Robert and Patricia Williams." Patricia was a handsome woman in her early 60s, wearing a beautiful navy dress and a somewhat guarded expression. Robert was distinguished with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I could see where Marcus got his gentle demeanor. "It's wonderful to finally meet you properly," I said, offering my hand to Patricia. "I understand we're in the same boat, finding out about the wedding after the fact." Patricia's expression softened slightly, and I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "Yes, well, these young people certainly know how to keep us on our toes, don't they?" "That they do," I agreed, and found myself actually laughing. Though I'm learning that maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. We talked for a few minutes, and I discovered that Patricia was a retired nurse, and Robert was a pastor at a community church on the South Side. They were warm people, clearly devoted to their family, and I could see why Maya had fallen in love with their son. "Marcus tells us you're a professor at Northwestern," Robert said. "English literature, is that right?" "Yes, for almost 25 years now. It's been my passion for as long as I can remember." "Then you understand the power of stories," he said thoughtfully. "How every story has unexpected turns, moments where the characters have to grow and change. I think maybe that's what we're all doing here tonight, writing a new chapter." His words struck me deeply, and I found myself nodding. "You're absolutely right, and I'm grateful for the chance to be part of this new chapter." As dinner service began, I found myself seated at a table with Denise, who'd been invited by Maya as a surprise for me, along with Marcus's sister, Angela, and her husband. The conversation flowed easily, lubricated by excellent wine and the kind of laughter that comes when people are genuinely enjoying each other's company. The food was spectacular. Roasted beets with whipped goat cheese, wood-fired oysters, perfectly cooked steaks, and sides that burst with flavor. But more than the food, I found myself savoring the atmosphere. The joy on Maya's face as she moved from table to table, the way Marcus's hand would find hers whenever she was near, the genuine warmth of the guests who clearly loved this young couple. Between courses, Marcus stood and clinked his glass gently. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. "Patricia and I want to thank all of you for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "When Maya and I got married 6 weeks ago, we thought we wanted something completely private, just the two of us. And that day was perfect. It really was. But what we didn't realize was how much we'd want to share our joy with the people who've shaped us, supported us, and loved us into becoming who we are today." He looked at Maya, who stood and joined him, their hands intertwining naturally. Maya continued, "We've learned over these past weeks that love isn't just about the two people in a relationship. It's about the family and friends who surround you, who celebrate with you in good times and support you through challenges. We made mistakes in how we handled our wedding, and we hurt people we love. But we're grateful for the grace we've been shown, and for the opportunity to celebrate with all of you now." Her eyes found mine across the room, and I felt my heart swell with pride and love. "To our parents," Marcus said, raising his glass, "thank you for raising us to be people capable of love, commitment, and growth. We wouldn't be who we are without you." Everyone raised their glasses, and I had to dab at my eyes with my napkin. After dinner, as dessert was being served, a stunning 3-tiered cake decorated with fresh flowers, Maya approached my table and extended her hand. "Mom, can we talk for a minute? Outside?" My heart jumped, but I nodded and followed her to a small terrace that overlooked the river. The November air was cold but refreshing, and the city spread out before us like a carpet of stars. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Everything's perfect," Maya said, smiling. "I just wanted a moment with you, away from everyone else." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small wrapped box. "I have something for you." "Maya, you didn't need to. Please, just open it." I unwrapped the box with trembling fingers to find a delicate silver frame. Inside was a photo I'd never seen before, Maya and Marcus on their wedding day, standing in front of the bean in Millennium Park. Maya was laughing, her head thrown back in pure joy, while Marcus looked at her with such love it was almost tangible. The cream-colored vintage dress she'd described looked perfect on her, and the happiness radiating from the image was undeniable. "I know it's not the same as being there," Maya said softly, "but I wanted you to have this, to see how happy we were, how happy we are." I couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the gesture. "It's beautiful. You're both so beautiful." "There's something else," Maya said. She turned the frame over, and I saw an inscription engraved on the back. "To Mom, who taught me about love, strength, and grace. Thank you for learning to let me fly. August 15, 2024. The tears came then, and I didn't try to stop them. I pulled Maya into a tight embrace, this remarkable woman who was my daughter, my teacher, my mirror. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered. "Not because you're living up to some standard I set, but because you're living authentically, bravely, as yourself. You're an amazing woman, Maya Thompson Williams, and I'm honored to be your mother." "I love you, Mom," Maya said, crying now too. "Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for trying. Thank you for being willing to change and grow with me." "I love you too, sweetheart, more than I could ever express." We stood there for a while, mother and daughter, overlooking the city that had been the backdrop for both our pain and our healing. Inside, we could hear laughter and music starting up. Someone had apparently brought speakers, and people were beginning to dance. Come on, Maya said, wiping her eyes and laughing. Let's go back in. I think Marcus's dad is about to break out some moves, and you don't want to miss that. As we walked back inside, Maya paused at the door. Mom, next month Marcus and I are hosting Thanksgiving at our new apartment. It won't be fancy. We're still using mismatched furniture and our kitchen is tiny, but we'd really love it if you'd come. And maybe you could bring your famous sweet potato pie. It was such a simple request, but it meant everything. An invitation into their life, into their home, into their new beginning. Not as someone who would take over or control, but as a welcomed guest, a cherished family member. I'd be honored, I said. And I promise I'll bring the pie and nothing but support and love. The rest of the evening passed in a warm blur. I watched Maya and Marcus dance their first dance to a song I didn't recognize, but that clearly meant something to them. I chatted with Patricia and discovered we shared a love of mystery novels and had both lost our mothers too young. I laughed at Robert's surprisingly good dance moves. I even danced myself, something I rarely did, caught up in the joy of the celebration. Near midnight, as the party was winding down and guests were starting to leave, Denise found me by the windows, looking out at the river. You did good tonight, she said, slipping her arm through mine. I just showed up and tried not to control everything. That's a pretty low bar. It's exactly the right bar, Denise corrected. You loved your daughter the way she needed to be loved tonight. That's not a small thing, Claire. That's everything. As I drove home through the quiet Chicago streets, the framed photo of Maya and Marcus on the seat beside me, I reflected on everything that had happened since that devastating dinner 6 weeks ago. The pain, the anger, the hurt, all of it had been real and valid. But so was this. The healing, the growth, the second chance. I'd spent so many years thinking that being a good mother meant protecting Maya from pain, guiding her away from mistakes, ensuring her life was perfect. But tonight, I'd learned that maybe being a good mother meant something different. Maybe it meant stepping back and trusting her to build her own life, make her own choices, and yes, even make her own mistakes. Maybe it meant loving her not for who I wanted her to be, but for who she actually was. The woman who wore vintage dresses and got married at courthouses. The woman who chose social justice over high salaries. The woman who built a life that looked nothing like mine, but was perfect for her. When I got home, I placed the framed photo on the mantel, right next to all the others, a new chapter in the visual story of Maya's life. And for the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Thank you for tonight, Mom, for everything. I love you. I texted back. I love you too, baby. See you for coffee on Saturday. And we need to start planning that Thanksgiving menu. Her response came quickly. Perfect. But Mom, just the pie, remember? I laughed out loud in my empty house. Just the pie, I promise. As I got ready for bed, I caught sight of myself in the mirror, the same woman who'd stood there 3 weeks ago, but somehow different. Softer, maybe. More humble. More open to the possibility that I didn't have all the answers, that growth could happen at any age, that love meant sometimes admitting you were wrong and choosing to do better. I thought about Pastor Robert's words, about stories and unexpected turns and characters who had to grow and change. This was my unexpected turn, my moment of necessary growth. And while the story hadn't unfolded the way I'd planned, it had led somewhere even more valuable, to a deeper, more authentic relationship with my daughter, to understanding that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. Outside my window, Chicago slept beneath a blanket of stars, the city that had witnessed my failures and my triumphs, my pain and my healing. Somewhere across town, Maya and Marcus were probably just getting home, tired and happy, beginning their life together with the blessing and support of their families. And me? I was beginning something too. A new way of being a mother, a new chapter in my own story. One where I didn't have to be perfect or have all the answers. One where I could learn and grow alongside my daughter. One where love looked like trust and respect and the courage to change. As I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Hope that Maya and I would continue to grow closer in this new dynamic. Hope that I'd be a grandmother someday, with the wisdom to support without controlling. Hope that the story we were writing together was far from over. It was just beginning. And this time, I'd let Maya help write it.